So we're actually talking a little bit earlier in the hour about the Comey fallout. But as we said, there's other big issues at play, and you've got a very specific take as to what's been articulated since the passage of the American Health Care Act on the House side. Now we're looking at the Senate. You issued both a release and a policy position paper about things that you and the group think that you should really be considering, and leaders should be considering in their language as they address this, because you have some issues with it.
Yeah, listen, this health care is among the most personal, important decisions any of us will make. You know that, I know that, your viewers know that. So we need our political leaders to take a serious look at this, not to demagogue it the way our governor and our congressional delegation are, not to scare people with people dying on the streets or people losing their health insurance coverage. None of that is going to happen because of whatever version of this law passes. We need to have a serious debate in this state, and there are some important decisions that our state lawmakers are going to be asked to make in the coming year or so. Mm-hmm. Let's assume this bill does pass in some form. It'll probably happen after our General Assembly session is closed, right? So are we just going to wait 6 months and do nothing and decide the many decisions that states are going to be empowered to make under the new law? Or should we establish some kind of open process, whether it's a commission, whether it's a fall session of the General Assembly? There are going to be huge decisions for our states to take. Do we take a Medicaid block grant? Do we set up a high-risk pool for those with pre-existing conditions? And those are just two of the major. There are many, many decisions our state's going to have to make, and we believe that all views need to be included in that process, not just behind closed doors with a typical I'll call it big government, view on it, because clearly the federal law is shifting the healthcare landscape, and Rhode Island needs to decide: are we going to go along with the shift or fight it? So let's stop the demagoguery. Let's have a serious discussion, and let's set up a serious process to evaluate this.
What'd you bring here with you today? It looks like you have notes.
Oh, that's just our release, just in case you cite any fact that I have it with me.
But as you said, you raised a number of issues. How the state should address health source, how the state should address Medicaid.
Right.
What's your thoughts? Let's maybe go down the list here. Let's talk about health source. What are the topics that should be engaged in this conversation?
Well, first of all, there's a myth that Health Source Rhode Island has been wildly successful. It hasn't been at all. In fact, our center predicted almost exactly what was going to happen 4 years ago. Their goal was to insure through private insurance and buying through the exchange 120-something thousand people. We projected that somewhere between 27 and 50,000 only would buy insurance, and it ended up being only in the low 30s. So we were right on with that. We also predicted that people would instead go to Medicaid, and that was going to blow our budget apart, and it has. I think 2 years ago or last year they said $50 million increase to Rhode Island taxpayers and Medicaid spending, and just last week another 27 million on top of that. So in Health Source Rhode Island, 2/3 of the people are signing up for Medicaid. We didn't need Health Source Rhode Island to sign up people for Medicaid. We already had that process in place.
We have to say the state did make indications that they were trying to take folks off Medicaid rolls.
Well, it's not happening. We would like to see that. Now again, and this is where the governor, I would like to offer some advice, if I can try to be constructive. Is that okay? Not being on Medicaid is not the end of the world. All right, Medicaid is bad insurance. It's insurance, but it doesn't guarantee you good health care. What the federal, the AHCA law, and what we believe should happen is that if people no longer qualify for Medicaid, they might be able to get to them with no out-of-pocket expense via tax credits private insurance of their choice that would be better and more reliable. Look at the only people who aren't getting their government promised benefits are the people standing in line because of UHIP. Haven't we learned that government is not reliable if you want to be dependent on it? So we think private insurance is a better way to go, and the Ryan Care Plan or the Trump Care Plan, whatever you want to call it, is going to allow very generous tax credits so that low-income people may not have to pay anything, but they can get private insurance, and we think that's a great way to go. So let's stop saying that if you're not on Medicaid that it's a bad thing for people. We think it's a better thing for people if they're on private insurance instead.
And let's talk about, you had mentioned it in your release too, the high-risk pools. How would this look? And again, we're looking at just what came out of the House, as you said. It could be a very different animal if or when it comes out of the Senate. But how do states address that?
Well, there'll be two options. Federally, what's going to happen is there's really three populations of people on insurance: Medicaid people, healthy people, and people with pre-existing conditions. Right now, the latter two are all put together, and everybody, and so healthy people and young people have to basically subsidize the premiums of older people and people with pre-existing conditions. The federal plan will decouple the two, so that healthy people and younger people just pay for what they need based on rates that are appropriate for them. And then for the people with pre-existing conditions, they will be separated possibly, and normally in a high-risk pool you would pay much more of a premium. But they've put in place two federal programs to reduce the premium, where the federal government will subsidize people in the high-risk pool or with pre-existing conditions so that their premiums are almost the same as anybody else would pay.
Well, it seems in the conversation right now, that seems to be a huge focus area, again,
It's
the pre-existing conditions. And what you hear a lot from folks who are opposed to the American Health Care Act is saying that folks with pre-existing conditions won't be able to afford it, and you're calling this a fallacy.
Absolute fallacy. There's two myths that I want to dispel. Nobody's going to be thrown off Medicaid. Zero. I've been on 3 national conference calls with actual U.S. Congress people, men and women, who have written the bill. And we had a chance to ask them questions. We were assured, it's written in the law, nobody will lose their Medicaid coverage, and everybody with pre-existing conditions will still be guaranteed coverage. It's just going to be a little different mechanism by which it'll be paid for. So any comments to the contrary are just what we would call fear-mongering, and irresponsible. We need to have a responsible, serious debate about this.
And you say having a debate about it, you put the policy position out today, you're here in studio at Go Local. What are your plans moving forward to bring this to more people, to provide them with what you are providing information here today? Obviously going to the website, but from a more public standpoint, obviously the entirety of the delegation being Democrat, what do you see as being able to accomplish moving forward?
Well, because we don't see anybody at the State House and we don't see anybody in our congressional delegation who's going to give any serious or honest thought to this bill, we feel it kind of falls upon us to put out some ideas that should be considered. And once the final bill is passed, we're working, I should mention, you may know him, Gary Alexander. Mm-hmm. Gary is the former Director of Health and Human Services in Rhode Island. He held a similar position for the state of Pennsylvania. He's now a independent private consultant. He does a lot of work for the state of Massachusetts and other states on health care. We're probably going to try to put some kind of grant proposal together and see if we can put together very specific ideas that what the state can do to best serve the interests of the people, to make higher quality, lower cost insurance available to more people. Medicaid will always be there as a safety net for those who truly need it. But for those who earn a little more income, there are many programs out there that would allow them to have almost, if not totally, cost-free private insurance. So how we get there, those will be the policy recommendations we hope to be able to make once we see what the final bill looks like.
Absolutely. Right. And as folks have been saying, it's probably going to take obviously more time on the Senate side. We're dealing with the Comey fallout. We're going to see what happens there. But, as you kind of started out the conversation, was don't not address the issue from your standpoint after the assembly session's over, when, again, we might see something passed later. Do you think elected officials will heed that call?
Well, I can tell you I've talked to, I won't mention names yet, but I have talked to 2 Democrats in the General Assembly who seem to have an open mind for this. And, we're saying to the larger group, don't stick your head in the sand and say, oh no, I just wish it wasn't so. Well, it is so. Obamacare has failed to a large degree. Yes, it's insured more people, but the costs and the disruption to the marketplace have been enormous. The cost to taxpayers have been enormous. There is a better way. Open your mind, think about it. Clearly, we're moving away from what Obamacare was trying to move us towards, which is a single-payer, government-controlled, totally run, government-run healthcare system. We're moving back towards a free market, market-based, patient-based system. And I think that's the right way to go. It will be in the best interests of Rhode Islanders. Please open your mind. Please put in place that process so we can have an open and honest discussion and hear both sides, our side and the other side.
And you've done that a lot this past year, having these types of open debates and bringing lots of different folks around the table. Would you say you've even done more of it this year than you've done in the past?
Yeah, we've realized that for us in the minority thinking in this state, I guess, that even though we think our research and our ideas are good, that unless we can present a broader unified coalition front, that we may not be taken as seriously as we think we should. So, and we're very happy in finding that when we sit down and have honest discussions with our friends from the left, that there are a number of areas where we agree on, or we can work to get to the point we agree on something. So that gives me great hope in this state. We've started something, as you know, called the Rhode Island Families Coalition. Ray Rickman, who's been on the show a lot, is one of our steering committee members. Gary Sass, who's on the show a lot, is one of our steering committee members. A woman named Joanna Harris in Providence is also, you should have her on sometime. She's dynamite. And
talk with Joanna often.
Yeah. Oh, you do.
Oh,
okay,
yes.
Good. So we're the core of this thing, and we look. And after this session, we look to really grow our voice and grow our reach a little bit. But we can work together if we just stop yelling at each other and stop with the demagoguery.
And one of the things that you're often faced with is the folks who just say, "You're funded by the Koch brothers." You're here in studio. What do you say to this argument time and time again? And they're like, well, maybe you're not funded, but your research is funded, or the partners nationally funded. It all goes back to the Koch brothers.
Well, it might be hard for our friends on the liberal side or the progressive side to understand that there really are people in this state who do believe in our Constitution, who do believe in the power of markets to enrich the people of any society. We have over 430 private donors, almost all of whom are in Rhode Island. All of our major funding comes from Rhode Island. We have categorically denied any funding from any outside group, as you mentioned, like that funds us in any major way. We work very hard at fundraising. We really do. It's a struggle. We wish we had more money. We could be a little bigger and be a little more influential. But we honestly represent the interests of a lot of hundreds and hundreds of just good, solid Americans and Rhode Islanders.
Well, we've had you in the studio before. We're kind of very focused right here on the American Health Care Act, but you're always doing research. You're always putting things out. Summer's around the corner. What are you focused on? Let's take a step back from the bigger picture. End of the General Assembly session. Now you're a 501c3. There are advocacy arms of what you do. What are you focused with up at the Assembly?
Well, we don't spend a lot of time at the General Assembly. We're not lobbyists. We don't do much of that. Again, if we were bigger and had more staff, we could do that. So we mostly do public appeals and media appearances. So thank you for having us. But we're really fighting against this progressive, what they call a fair shot agenda, what we call a no shot agenda. It's totally unfair to business owners and to the business community. We have the worst business climate in the nation, and yet the progressive wing of the Democrat Party wants to make it even worse with these, free paid time off and higher minimum wage and all kinds of other energy pricing things that would raise energy costs for businesses. I was at a business yesterday, a machine shop. Energy. They use a lot of energy. When you raise the cost of energy through all these renewable energy mandates and carbon taxes like they're proposing, you could knock a company like that and their dozen employees or so out of business. And they just don't get it. So we're really fighting this progressive agenda right now as the biggest threat to our state.
What do you have to say about the earned sick time proposal? There's been so much attention paid to it. A lot of employers, put in sick time. A lot of employers don't. Obviously, the coalition is saying that they need to mandate it from the state level. But, their argument that if someone's sick, they shouldn't decide between going into work or staying home. How, if that's not the best way, in your opinion, to address the issue, what might be the best way?
Let the market handle it. Let businesses handle it. Most businesses do offer it because they feel it's important for their employees to be competitive if they want to retain good employees. Some businesses can't afford to offer it. So to force that small group of businesses that don't offer it to do it, again, just like with higher energy costs, you could knock them out of business.
Have you talked to business owners about this?
Absolutely. They are outraged at this. I've talked to some business owners who say, well, if I'm forced to pay sick time, I'm going to cut back on the vacation time I give, or I'm going to pack up and leave the state. Now, none of that is good. So, stop meddling in the private market. if people don't like their benefits package in a company, they're free to go to some other company that does offer it. That's the way the free market works. Consumers choose, we choose. Businesses have to respond, and if they don't respond, they pay whatever free market consequences there are. But get the government out of the business of business owners.
So hit upon the General Assembly. What about the rest of the year and what's on your agenda?
Well, we're very thrilled about our sales tax. As you know, we've been big proponents that reducing the sales tax by a dramatic amount is the best way to increase economic development and create thousands of new jobs. We have Representative Nardolillo who put in a bill to cut the sales tax from 7% to 3%. We have Representative Nunes, co-sponsored by Majority Leader Shikarchi, who said, we got to take a serious look at this. So they've sponsored a bill to form a commission, and the commission is not going to say if we should do it, like the last commission did, but how would we do it? How would we handle for the uncertainty and how much budgetary impact that would have, and how would we plan for the extra revenue that would come in from the extra jobs and the revenue losses that would come? How do we square that up? So that's going to be a very productive commission. I think the legislation would have me as a seat on that commission. So I look forward to having that happen. Hopefully that bill will pass. I don't think Rep. Nardolillo's bill will pass this year, but I think the commission bill will.
Set the stage for it next year.
I think it's
because
great.
Do you think, let's look at what the agenda is this year. The Speaker is very much in favor of the complete elimination of the car tax. Should he, continue along this path? He talks about things being kind of one step at a time. Are you hoping that's the sort of big ticket issue that you're looking at in 18?
Well, let me say this in general, and some people might be surprised to hear me say this, but it's great that we're talking about tax cuts, and it's great that this speaker is allowing those discussions to happen. When we first put out the sales tax cut idea, we had a governor in Chafee and a speaker in Fox that didn't want to hear anything about it. They didn't want to let people keep more of their money. Now we're having that conversation with this speaker. This speaker has held the line against some of the more progressive and radical ideas that have been put forth by that wing of the Democrat Party. So we're hopeful that we're finding finally a little simpatico and a group we can work with, and we have had communications. We talk probably more to Democrats than we do to Republicans, even though we don't have a full-time legislative affairs capacity.
Well, you're going to be focusing again on the American Health Care Act, letting folks know they can go to the, tell me your URL again.
Yeah, rifreedom.org, and I think if you do /AHCA, you can read our policy brief and our recommendations on that. But again, we need serious discussion, honest discussion on this very important topic. And I urge lawmakers to set up some kind of process for the summer or fall, so we're not behind the 8 ball when next session starts.
Okay, well, I appreciate your coming in today to be able to talk about this. Mike Stenhouse.
I was grateful. Thank you.
I'll let you go around the corner.